Assalamu alaikum students. This is our second lesson for the subject of history. As we were studying the decline of Mughal Empire, in last lesson we covered the Aurangzeb policies which contributed to the decline of Mughal Empire. However, this was not the only reason which contributed to the decline of Mughal Empire. We will discuss some other factors as well which contributed to the decline of Mughal Empire. As I have developed a tree chart for better understanding, first of all, we will discuss another factor for the decline of Mughal Empire is ineffectiveness of successions. We will discuss its different aspects which prove that their ineffective succession contributed to the decline of Mughal Empire. For example, first of all, absence of succession law. There was not any proper law for the succession. Succession means that whenever any emperor died, there was not a law that who will succeed him. There was not a proper criteria to replace the emperor after his death. So this led to the internecine warfare. Princes and other people, for example nobility and influential people, start to fight with each other to get the throne. This led to the wastage and loss of a lot of empire resources and ultimately contributed to the decline of Mughal Empire. There are some examples of succession ineffectiveness. For example, the fights between Aurangzeb and his brothers and the fights between his sons as well. These are some examples which contributed to the decline of Mughal Empire. For example, fights between Aurangzeb and his sons also contributed to the decline of Mughal Empire. In 1657, Shah Jahan fell seriously ill. This presented a serious problem for the emperor, as he had 4 sons, all of whom were of mature age, were all governors of important parts of the empire and had large armies available. They all wanted to be the emperor. When it appeared that Shah Jahan was dying, they began to jostle for the power. 2 of them, Shah Shuja and Murad, actually had coins struck in their name showing them as their new emperor. However, eldest son Dara Sikhu was thought to be the emperor's preferred successor, but he could establish himself in power. It seemed that he could not because in 1658 2 of his brothers, Murad and Aurangzeb, joined forces and defeated Dara Sikhu's army. But then Shah Jahan recovered and ordered his sons not to march on order. Aurangzeb replied that his father had lost control and it was important that he, means Aurangzeb, take over and re-establish order. In May 1658, he defeated imperial armies led by Dara Sikhu and took his father prisoner. Shah Jahan was allowed to remain in Agra until his death in 1666, where he was buried in the Taj Mahal. So these were the fights which weakened the empire, and this clearly show that loss of resources because of these fights and political instability. Similarly, when Aurangzeb became emperor by defeating his rivals in battle, he was determined to avoid such a war after his death. So he divided empire between his 3 sons, but he did not succeed. Fighting broke out between them, and eventually Prince Muazzam established himself as emperor. He survived only a few years, and then his 4 sons fought over the throne. But the victor, Jahandar Shah, was murdered within a year. In the 10 years after Aurangzeb's death, 12 different people claimed to be emperor. The stable Mughal Empire had become weak and divided. Muhammad Shah became new emperor in 1719 and ruled for almost 30 years. But he faced so much opposition that he was really the last Mughal leader who could claim to be the emperor. These were some examples which clearly show us that all these internecine warfares and succession disputes had a greater contribution for the decline of Mughal Empire. So let's move to the other reason for the decline of Mughal Empire, and that was poor character of Aurangzeb's successors and nobility. Since Mughal Empire was a very huge and prosperous and wealthy empire, it had brought a lot of fortune to the nobility and the Mughal emperors and kings. But this thing also contributed for the failure of this empire as well. For example, the decline of military expertise. When dynasties are in power for long periods, it is easy to become complacent and to imagine that success will not continue forever. This happened with the Mughals, who let their army's expertise decline until it was no longer an effective fighting. When it became obvious that the Mughal strength was declining, discontented groups within the empire were quick to act. Consider how Aurangzeb was unable to deal with Shivaji's rebellion in the Deccan. So these military fights with the local insurgents and foreign invaders contributed a lot for the decline of military expertise and loss of military resources. This also caused the death of veteran military generals and loyal military soldiers. This was the reason for the decline of Mughal Empire. And the other factor, which we can call the player seeking, this fortune and wealth, this huge empire also caused to the decline of Mughal Empire. The wealth created by the Mughals also encouraged the nobility to become player loving and degenerate. They betrayed the principles of Islam and instead enjoyed the pleasure brought about by the wealth. Nobles often had the finest clothes, jewelry, and food. One friend of Akbar is said to have ordered at least 100 courses at each meal. The emperor also set a poor example. Fine buildings were a symbol of power and culture, but they were also sometimes so expensive that they were a symbol of extravagancy. These huge spendings and poor character of Mughals also contributed to the decline of Mughal Empire. Many of the rulers had luxury courts. They used to marry a lot of variety of women, and whenever an emperor used to move, hundreds of the people move along with him, and such a luxury life was being enjoyed by them, which was not even dreamed by the other empires. Along with this, they were also losing control from their empire, which had become very large. As the wealth and influence of the nobility grew, they became highly powerful at court, and some of the emperors found it very difficult to control them. With weak control from the center, the Mansabdari system, which was actually a administrative setup which was set up by the Mughal rulers to efficiently manage their empire, to collect taxes and to raise army. The Mansabdari system was not sufficient supervised, and administrative efficiency declined. Discontent grew and revenue from tax collection declined. So by this way, empire became even weaker and became difficult to manage. This was the actually character of Aurangzeb's successors and nobles. All these factors also had a great impact on the Mughal Empire, and this ultimately led to its decline. So the students, these were some other examples for the decline of Mughal Empire. Sorry, not examples, actually other factors and reasons which contributed to the decline of Mughal Empire. In the next lesson, we will also study many other factors which also contributed to the decline of Mughal Empire. So go through your book and try to understand these three things. Alright, Allah Hafiz.